It seems like it was right after I finished my last film, and I think as soon as I'm finishing a movie, I'm thinking about the next one.
Oh, man. I hate hills.
It was a film about homeless people that I made. Great Speeches was personal, but not in the most obvious way. And I had certain things about relationships I wanted to explore, and about kind of this character who wasn't very content, and a lot of men in my life that I know. There's such a sad desperation we have in meeting someone, and there's something really legitimate to that desire, but it's also about maybe not being as content with yourself or loving yourself enough in the right kind of way.
I don't want to pressure you, but it's like I don't know how long I could be.
I don't know him.
Maybe one of the things that drew me to working with him is because he was a documentarian. And I think intrinsically, I knew that his work, that he would have sensibilities to working with the camera. A lot of directors come from theater, and it's not that he certainly came from theater as well, but he took that out into the real world with real shooting situations. And that gains you a lot of movie making experience that you wouldn't really get unless you were on set. You learn how to see people, how to work with people that aren't other filmmakers and get something out of them.
Sometimes it helps to step in, but some of the time, no matter how much you step in, the female is not going to respond because they know something.
I like working with Linus because he makes me feel good. And that was the first thing that drew me to Linus as a person, was his kind of improvisational nature, playfulness. And I really enjoyed working on this film because we developed and wrote together in that way. So we were able to kind of bounce ideas off each other and then quickly jotting down what we got on the laptop. And it was a fun way of creating a film and starting that process.
And I had been watching Linus years prior when he was making Walking to Werner. He immediately grabbed me as someone who knew what they wanted to do. That's hard in filmmaking. You have so many choices, you have so many people around you. Like, we can do whatever you want as long as you know what you want to do.
So we had to get some money together. This was kind of a hard thing for me because usually my filmmaking, it's like, I just love that you can just go out and do it. But I knew because of the trip and because we had to put work into this car we were going to get probably. And Mark Duplass was in town. It was around the Seattle Film Festival in 2008. He was there with Baghead, and I had met him on the set of To Adolescents.
We're looking for a friend of ours. He's like a curly-haired, 14-year-old skinny kid. Yeah, he's got like a blue shirt on.
Yeah.
You have? Where you came from?
Yeah.
Are you sure you didn't? I mean, I'm wearing a blue T-shirt. Are you sure it wasn't me? Or
I'm not sure. And I talked to Mark about the film, and we all went out and talked more about it, and Mark suggested that we get in contact with Thomas Woodrow.
Thomas Woodrow, ask him, and I think he also called Tom on my behalf.
And he was telling me that, filmmaker Linus Phillips, actor in To Adolescents, had an idea for his first fiction film.
Tom had seen Walking to Werner.
It turned out to be really entertaining and profound and great. So
and knew that I think I had a lot to say about the road.
And fortunately, I did think it was an idea, so a good idea. So there wasn't a lot of convincing that had to happen. And
then Tom got on board, and we continued writing.
So we put work into the car. We rented the camera, and we just started shooting all the Seattle stuff.
Literally within half an hour, I talked to Mark, called Linus on the phone. We talked about the movie. I basically agreed to do it, and off we went.
Linus and I had a few conversations beforehand about the way the film was going to look and how we were going to approach making the movie.
And I think because he knew I did documentary work and shot my own stuff a lot, I would try to look out for him and make it visual. And I gave him a lot of leeway because I was an actor and director, and a lot of it was very improv. And
he knew the camera very well, but he didn't know that, if I wanted to get a wide shot, I'd physically have to be further away. So there's no concept for him about what the idea of a prime lens was, this idea that you have one field of view that cannot change. So for me, I think it helped our relationship that he knew that if I was 3 feet from him, we were on a very close shot of his face, and if we were 30 feet away, it was a wide shot, and he had more range of motion, and he could move around. Another thing in terms of our working style that changed right away and was very healthy is because it was dynamic and changing all the time and spontaneous, because it had that documentary element, we had to come up with a system, a nonverbal system of when we were going to shoot and when we weren't. And Linus would go off and try to do something, and he was struggling with it, and I'm like, this is drama. And so I started rolling, and Linus must have intuitively knew that, or knew that while he was doing it and getting frustrated that he might have had it within himself to be like, this is probably drama, and even though I haven't worked with Sean for very long, maybe he's getting it, maybe he's not. And we also realized that we were shooting on the red. The camera has an internal fan that's on when you're not rolling, and as soon as you hit the record button, the camera gets quiet. So if we were in a close proximity to one another and he heard the camera go quiet, he knew I was shooting.
I really love that type of filmmaking. Just to this day, like just thinking about some of the first scenes we shot.
Just since it's all been over here, we'll try to mix up the scenes.
Me and him out there. And I just get so romantic and lovey about it. I just love that idea of just 2 guys out there shooting and making a movie. And so, you know, I'll always remember that, me and Sean out there on the alpaca farm shooting stuff and just trying to feel it out. Like, what is this?
So Linus and Davy Blue had started to write scenes, and I was forwarded a treatment at one point, and the first 20 pages were scripted, and then it says, gets into the van, drives across country, and has a life-altering experience.
Really, I wanted the film to be much more documentary-like, or find more non-actors and do a whole involved scene, like happened with Paul Lazar, the mechanic Vic character.
You know, like a jug.
A jug. Jug.
Yeah.
Jug.
No, like for gas.
Hello.
But I wanted to do this with non-actors while we were on the road. But we just did not have time. We were on the road for only 10 days.
Part of it was my schedule, part of it was other people involved in their schedule, and I think that was frustrating. We could have taken 3 times as long. Ideally, we would have gotten to a city, spent a day just feeling it out, meeting people, finding locations, and then spend another day shooting.
And it was just, you know, basically just driving for days at a time just to get to the next city, you know, so that just to get far long enough so that we could buy ourselves a little time. Like, okay, great, we have an afternoon to shoot stuff, you know. So it was really very hard for me. I just felt like it was like continuous, like pearls just dropping through sewer grates, you know, day after day.
We put him in the back seat, or in the shorty being towed, and that brought a huge amount of production value to a very small budget shoot, where if we were really driving the shorty, we would have no way to get exterior shots unless I was physically outside on the road. And there's some of that, but this way it allowed us to shoot and keep moving, which I think was great.
We were so bare bones that we did not have, that there was literally not money for me to go on the road trip that they take in the movie, and which really, you know, they essentially documented. So it was really just Linus himself and Sean, the DP, and this guy, Jack Bennett, who was in charge of sort of logistics.
We'd get into town at, 10 o'clock at night, spend an hour scavenging for locations and anyone who would be willing to be in the movie.
Jack would just kind of be, and Sean would be at a bar laughing at me because I was like running around trying to, you know, sometimes for like an hour, just going up to every girl in the bar.
Maybe shoot from midnight to 2 in the morning, go find a motel, crash, and then have to get up out of there by 10, and we do it all over again.
I would get these sort of daily or semi-daily updates and be calling Jack and like, how's it going, Jack? Well, Thomas, it's going okay. I can't tell you it's going well now, Thomas. I wish I could, but I just can't.
It was a lot of trying to, you know, basically Jack and Sean thinking I was going to strike out every time, as I often did, and then I'd turn around with a big smile on my face and be like, we got one, you know.
Hey.
He used to be an actor, so we ended up putting him in the film, and so we just used whatever we had.
Smoke doesn't bother you, does it?
No, it's all right.
And I think having said that, the things we did stop and shoot were really compelling, and most of them made it into the movie.
Early on in the film, when we started, I knew it had to have some buddy element. I just wanted something like that since Linus was such a loner and having issues with women. So I called up Jim Fletcher. Jim flew to Minneapolis and met us. He kind of canceled 3 days or 4 days worth of rehearsals because he does a lot of theater stuff in New York.
Can I come in?
And we just made up how his character would make it into the film.
Can you open the door?
So it was very spontaneous and improv, but it's also like there's so much history that Jim and I have that I knew it would like come. Even if we didn't have rehearsal time, we had years of very meaningful experiences that I think would just come across without even trying. And, and it was really fun working with him. So anyway, we were gonna like have him be in New York and then just kind of have this moment of like, well, what am I gonna do? And he kind of has to go back and live with his parents in Boston.
Linus, what are you doing here?
Surprise. Hey, I was just wondering if I could move back for a while.
Yeah, that's fine.
And we shot some scene with just me and my dad, and we thought it would end there, and maybe with some Super 8 footage of me as a kid.
The schedule was totally rushed. There was this sort of pressure that I think we put on ourselves that the film was going to get finished within those 11 days, and that was ridiculous.
And it was really hard. I had to tell Sean, I'm like, we don't have a movie,
And that hurt, and that felt bad, and we had just done this really intense emotional thing together, and it wasn't complete.
I guess I was maybe too honest because it was so hard for me, and I didn't know. I wouldn't know how long it would be before we could shoot again. It ended up being a whole year.
What do you do when you've shot a film without a script and you have something and you don't know what it is and you want to finish a film in theory?
Anyway, so it was like during this year I was just editing the footage. Sometimes I'd be kind of too depressed to look at it. But, I started writing in a way where, like, writing around what I already had.
It's like someone had handed them this bucket of tapes and said, we're making a movie. Can you be a script consultant and figure out what we need to do to fix this?
And finally, Linus, I don't know, sort of self-animated and cut all this material together. And I'll never forget sitting down with Sean and Linus in my apartment.
And both Tom and I were just in shock. It was way better than we expected it to be. It was very clear that
it wasn't a full movie in terms of telling a full narrative.
But Linus had really taken it to another level.
So a year later, we shot with Jim in New York, even though it's supposed to be 3 days later, he opens the door.
Hey, Linus.
Having Davy Blue's character come back in the subway, it almost seemed a little bit too like a normal movie, but I just love that, because I would really imagine in my own life what would happen if this woman that I had a relationship with, if I saw her.
What are you doing here?
For months I knew I wasn't over her, because if I saw her, I would just fall apart, I wouldn't know what to do. But I thought, like, what if I was in some situation where I was with someone else and it was like this relationship and friendship happening and blossoming that had nothing to do with her. And if that was going on, like, the pain that I might feel from seeing her, it just wouldn't mean anything or as much at all. And I just thought, how beautiful, because my character would seem like he's over her, but also not, because he's just having to, and that's like in real life. You don't ever say you're over someone, I don't think. More often it seems like they're just, other things are getting in the way, and they're like closer to your lens, and so they're taking up more focus. I just thought that was a nice way of kind of ending it with him. Yeah, and Jim and I really I've hung out a lot with his daughter, and we've had a nice time. So I like the ending, like kind of of showing that and showing that he's moving on and not having needing the template of a woman to feel connected to people. I think that was really nice.